How's it going, everybody? It's C-RadTV back here with another video. So, of course, it's time for another Detroit Lions NFL draft preview. So, in the last draft preview, we looked at the top day 3 tight end prospects for the 2021 NFL draft. And in this video, we're going to wrap up the offensive draft previews for this year by looking at the top day 3 offensive linemen prospects for rounds 4 through 7 of the 2021 NFL draft. And it's the first time we're attacking the offensive linemen in this video. So yeah, since, hey, we can always use a few more linemen for offensive depth, and we are missing an offensive lineman in terms of a tackle. I know the reports about Penei Sewell possibly falling to the Lions. I'm not buying it. I think the lowest Penei Sewell will fall is 5th to the Bengals. I don't think Sewell will not be there at 7. I think the only way the Lions would go up is to trade up for him, and I don't see the Lions trading up. So yeah, that kind of narrows it down. But yeah, I wouldn't mind targeting an offensive lineman in the later rounds for sure. Maybe find a diamond in the rough. Who knows what happens? But anyway, enough talk. Let's go ahead. Let's jump right into it. So starting off with offensive tackles, the first one we're going to go over here, hailing out of BYU, standing 6'6", weighing 300 pounds, we got Brady Christensen. So for Brady's strengths, he has strong instincts, can pick up blocks in the run and the pass game, moves well, whether he drops back or moves forward. When he's asked to pull, he uses his length to his advantage, gathers momentum that drives back defenders. He's great footed in a zone blocking scheme, allows him to get great movement on his blocks, especially in the run game. He did start for 3 consecutive seasons at BYU without missing a game. In terms of his weaknesses, though, he has his perks, but at the next level, coaches will need to fix his technique, starting with his handwork, so he's got to learn to put his hands in the right place and not take dumb penalties. Often leaves himself exposed as he goes for shoulders while blocking. Due to this approach, often leaves him susceptible to getting beat on the inside and the outside. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to Eric Fisher at a Kansas City free agent. Offensive tackle Eric Fisher since Eric got released by the Chiefs. I almost forgot about that. But yeah, still, definitely a player, and he also had some big duties protecting Zach Wilson's blind side. So he has some potential for sure. Definitely someone to keep an eye on for sure. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of East Carolina, standing 6'4", weighing 285 pounds, we got Deontay Smith. So for Deontay's strengths, he possesses light feet, shows terrific initial quickness out of a stance and pass protection, has a wide stance, good core strength, long arms, allows him to play with excellent patience as pass rushers approach. He can dance with them, easily shuffles laterally, protects against outside speed rushers, as well as counters back inside. He shows plenty of fight as a run blocker, generates strong initial pops with his hands, keeps his legs driving. He's also been listed as one of the top sleeper picks of the draft because of his light feet and strong arms, which are 2 of the most important traits needed for pass protection, and he has them. In terms of his weaknesses, though, a lot of scouts said mobile when he was invited to the Pro Bowl. They will not just be questioning his health. His frame currently appears better suited to tight end in the NFL than offensive tackle, though it is difficult to imagine Deontay adding 15-plus pounds to give himself a better chance. He's better against bull rushers than his size may suggest. Although he does leave his chest exposed too often, he can be overwhelmed at times. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to George Fant of the New York Jets. Has a lot of potential. He has the 2 biggest traits you need in pass protection, which is crucial. This is definitely someone to keep an eye on for sure. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Cincinnati, standing 6'5", weighing 310 pounds, we got James Hudson. So for James' strengths, he's a low-cut lineman. His physical proportions, they're much different from a lot of the AAC competition he faced. Uses his length effectively, does a great job keeping control over the distance he works at. Mean finisher too, regularly drives defensive ends and linebackers 6 feet deep. Just making sure they're social distancing. Anyway, though, continuing on, he's strong enough to redirect defenders in the run game, creates winning angles for his backs. In terms of his weaknesses, though, his technical aspects of the game are still coming to him. He must become more controlled with working with his hands and feet in conjunction, so he's got to be at better hand placement so he doesn't take dumb penalties. but the physical tools that he possesses makes him a great developmental project for the long run. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to Chukwuma Okorafor of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Sorry if I got that name wrong. It's a bit of a tongue twister. But yeah, still, he has a lot of potential for sure. He has a couple things that he's going to have to develop. You know, it may take a couple years for him to hit his stride, but this is maybe someone to keep an eye on for the long run for a couple years down the line. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Washington State, standing 6'6", weighing 320 pounds, we got Abraham Lucas. So for Abraham's strengths, he's a long and well-made offensive tackle with his ideal size at right tackle. Matches the measurement that most NFL teams will want in an offensive tackle. Has some great flashes with timing. His punch in sync with the pass rusher, locks them out with his length. Has a great natural base, allows him to anchor as a pass protector. He's tough to get going backward with a bull rush. Isn't going to wow with his ability as a run blocker, but his strength to hold his own ground against physically gifted opponents is notable. In terms of his weaknesses, though, his technique with his pass sets and overall average agility for the position, it makes the projection a bit difficult for him. While he is an adequate athlete for the position, he can't be trusted to work in space at a high level and consistently protect the corner. So a couple things there. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to David Sharp of the Washington No-Skins. You know, definitely a player with some potential for sure. Maybe someone to keep an eye on. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Nebraska, standing 6'5", weighing 300 pounds, we got Brennan J Jameis. So in terms of Brennan's strengths, he already looks like an NFL offensive lineman with a much beefier build than his listed size may suggest. Moves easily out of his stance at pass protection, can cut off speed rushes while he shows good lateral agility and balance. Chokes off counters back to the inside. Can fire out of his stance as a run blocker as well. Quickly seals off defenders at the point of attack. Has at least adequate arm length and hand strength to latch and sustain blocks. Turns his weaknesses, though, he's not in the mauler his frame suggests. He provides more turn and seal blocks than driving opponents off the ball. Could stand to improve his grip strength, especially if he's moved inside. When he's being often, it was because opponents were able to get into his chest, so he's got to learn to keep his opponents low and not let him get to the chest. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to Rick Wagner of the Green Bay Packers. So definitely a player with a lot of upside for sure. Definitely someone to keep an eye on. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Northern Iowa, standing 6'8", weighing 321 pounds, we got Spencer Brown. So for Spencer, he's your prototype downfield offensive tackle, so he's very good at getting downfield and making blocks down the field. In terms of his strengths, he's one of the most athletic movers in the offensive tackle class. His length and smooth pass sets jump off the film. Natural mover, gets lateral in a hurry. Size makes it easy to extend and make landfall with target. He's a nasty finisher, plays well with a good edge to his game as a run blocker. Turns his weaknesses, though, his technique is still incredibly raw. He will need to become more disciplined with his leverage and hand usage, so he's got to get better with his hand placement and not take stupid penalties. Tools are there to suggest he become adequate in those areas over time. While he can be a bit too quick to resort to brawling with his hand usage, it often did not matter at the level of competition he faced. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to Colton Miller of the Las Vegas Raiders. So definitely a big offensive tackle. A lot of upside for sure. Definitely someone to keep an eye on. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Oklahoma, standing 6'6", weighing 327 pounds, we got Adrian Ely. So for Adrian's strengths, he seems to tower over the rest of the trenches on film. Uses his size well from a sheer strength standpoint. Moves very well and his drops provide solid protection despite how unrefined his technique is. Short area quickness is solid. Leaves a lot of hope for his overall athletic profile to develop after shifted weight on his frame. In terms of weaknesses, though, almost immediately upon watching this film, his first issue is he plays too straight up, does himself no favors with leverage, also has issues with being too wide in his hand usage, so he's got to not put his hands wide. He's got to keep them close and get better with that hand placement. Leaves him open on the inside, still underdeveloped from a technical standpoint, so he's got to get better with technique. As an athlete, fairly stiff, easy to maneuver around when dealing with him moving upfield. In terms of his NFL comparison, He's been compared to Jermaine Ifedo of the Chicago Bears. So definitely has a lot of upside. A couple, gonna have to work on technique a bit, but definitely maybe someone for a couple years down the line, or for depth. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Texas A&M, standing 6'5", weighing 315 pounds. We got Dan Moore Jr. So in terms of Dan's strengths, has a dense and compact for an offensive tackle, has good body type for kicking inside the guard in the pros. Hand usage and footwork are well refined. That helps to make up for some of the limitations that he faces. Can accurately land inside the chest with his punch and handles counters effectively. Leverage is reliable, won't be easy to uproot once he settles to a spot. His football IQ shows when he's asked to handle stunts and trade off assignments with fellow linemen. Turns his weaknesses too, though. He's not too lacking in length or quickness to take some snaps outside, but there are some concerns about his ability to make the leap athletically as a tackle. He'll need to improve his run blocking power and angles as a pro. His body control and timing, it should make that growth easier. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to Martanis Rankin of the Kansas City Chiefs. So he has some upside for sure. Maybe someone to keep an eye on for sure. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Notre Dame, standing 6'5", weighing 290 pounds, we got Robert Hainsey. So for Robert's strengths, perhaps his most notable trait is his overall motor, brings high energy and effort on every snap. His drives blocks to his fullest capability until the whistle blows in the run game. Does a nice job turning his assignment out away from the play to either create lanes or keep the defender on the other side of the field. In terms of his weaknesses, though, a lot of scouts are going to want him to add to his college playing weight. There will be question of whether he fits better inside or outside. Overall hand strength can be an issue when he tries to sustain blocks. His swim move seems to break his engagement and allows for the rushers to break free. Needs to work on his overall anchor as he gave up quite a bit of ground on bull rushes. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to Joe Haeg of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So has a lot of upside for sure. Get really good in the run game. Definitely this is someone we need to keep an eye on for sure. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Fresno State, standing 6'5", weighing 318 pounds, we got Cyrus Torres. So in terms of Cyrus' strengths, he possesses a wide base and a patient approach to pass protection. He's a tough customer for any defensive lineman, excellent at keeping his hands loaded and ready to fire off. His timing with punches will derail a lot of undisciplined pass rushers. Length is adequate for a tackle. He shouldn't have any issue with working at range. He was also a former high school wrestler, and he is the cousin of Buffalo Bills defensive end A.J. Epinez. So he has some football roots for sure. Turns his weaknesses, though, he's very limited as a run blocker. Isn't able to generate a ton of power with his initial punch or leg drive. Angles are precise, which leads to issues with sustaining blocks after making initial contact. Movement skills are only average, which causes limitation as a combo and space blocker. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to Eric Magnuson of the Las Vegas Raiders. Has a lot of upside for sure. A couple things to work on, though, for development, on technique and whatnot. Someone still to keep an eye on for sure. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Texas A&M, standing 6'5", weighing 320 pounds, we got Carson Green. So for Carson's strengths, he's a jumbo-sized right tackle, checks off the physical boxes that teams will want for the position, backs it up by having a sufficient anchor for the pros, good pass protection with disciplined hands, accuracy, and timing that should help him translate easier. Movement skills are somewhat average by league standards, but he's not a liability as an athlete. In terms of his weaknesses, though, he has some balance issues that will need to be corrected before he can be trusted to see the field in the pros. Has issues with leaning and overextending as a run blocker. He's slick and control pass sets that will open the door for the NFL, but his development with technique and run blocking control will be needed to prop it open. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to now retired offensive tackle Austin Wentworth. So he has a lot of upside for sure. A couple of things to work on in terms of run blocking and technique. Always room for improvement, but hey, still, someone maybe to keep an eye on for a couple of years down the line. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Stanford, standing 6'6", weighing 315 pounds. We got Foster Sorel. So for Foster's strengths, while his long legs may make getting leverage more difficult at the pro level, wasn't an inhibiting factor during his time at Stanford. Has a pro-ready frame, good bulk, ideal play strength, accuracy with his punch could use some work, plays with intensity and actively in his hand fighting. Won't allow defenders to dictate his terms of engagement. If it weren't for his height, he would be a good fit for the interior because of his grit and movement style. In terms of his weaknesses, though, his pass sets are clean enough. He gets decent depth, but he will need help against more athletic opponents. He's limited as a run blocker, doesn't have the type of power to uproot defenders and drive them out of the way. Even against linebackers, he isn't going to play the role of a bully and push guys around, so he's more going to be like a protector guy than a pusher. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to William Sleet of the Dallas Cowboys, so has some upside for sure. A couple things he's going to have to work on, but still, this is someone to keep an eye on. And the final offensive tackle we're going to go over before we move on to the guards. We have hailing out of California, standing 6'5", weighing 330 pounds. We got Jake Kerhan. So for Jake's strengths, he's built like a sumo wrestler. Has a brawling style and knockout power. Makes him one of the most imposing tackle prospects in this draft class. Hand uses as a pass blocker is timely and smart. When he makes contact, defenders drop like they've been hit by a bull. His football IQ and awareness stands out as well. Does a great job of identifying and dealing with stunts. Anchor is more than sufficient for the pros. Teams won't need to worry about the strength. In terms of his weaknesses, though, he's a limited mover, isn't going to have much success in space. Average agility will make him a liability if on an island against athletic defensive ends. If he cannot become more controlled with his leverage and sustain blocks longer, he might struggle to transition to the NFL, though. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to Robert Hunt of the Miami Dolphins, so has a lot of upside for sure. A couple things to keep an eye on, but still, maybe someone to keep an eye that could be like a rotating offensive lineman, for sure. So, moving on to guards now. The first guard we're going to go over here, hailing out of Notre Dame, standing 6'5", weighing 319 pounds, we got Tommy Kramer. So for Tommy's strengths, he's a massive human being with his weight being evenly distributed throughout his frame. Classic stonewall at guard, uses natural grit and power as well as functional quickness and strong technique to pave rushing lanes. Can fire off the snap in the run game, creates immediate push, keeps his leg driving through contact, works for work. Width and core strength also make him quite effective in pass protection, where he shows the lateral agility, timing, and poise expected of a 4-year starter from a pro-style offense. Makes him one of the more ready-made interior blockers from this class, at least for some schemes. In terms of his weaknesses, though, he has athletic limitations, which show up against speedy defenders. Struggles to recover if being initially. Lacks elite foot quickness and arm length. Further, he lumbers off the ball when he's asked to pull. Has inconsistent hitting toward moving targets at the second level. He started the first 12 games of his career at right tackle, but he lacks the balance and fluidity in his kick step to remain outside against NFL speed. So he does have some experience on other positions on the offensive line, which adds some versatility, so he can play almost anywhere on offensive line. Fitting him best at right guard in a power-based scheme. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to DJ Fluker of the Baltimore Ravens. So has a lot of upside for sure, and has some versatility. Can play almost anywhere on the offensive line, but more fitted at guard, or right guard at least. No, a couple things to keep an eye on, but definitely someone to keep an eye on for sure. And the final guard we're going to go over before we move on to centers, we got hailing out of Grambling, standing 6'2", weighing 320 pounds. We got David Moore. So David, he's one of those small school studs, so he's someone that killed it in a small school district. In terms of his strengths, he's a squatty guard, falls below the typical height minimum for NFL evaluators, but he makes up for it with plus movement skills and adequate technique. Mean player, can find work, tries to blow up defenders wherever he can. Has transitional quickness, fluidity as a polar and combo blocker, stands out, has the pep in his step to hit difficult angles. Anchor is solid, he won't be knocked back easily on initial contact. And as you can see by the image I pulled up here, He also did get an invite to the Pro Bowl, made some strong impressions, so that's more likely could raise his draft stock too. In terms of his weaknesses, though, he isn't a particularly powerful individual when he's asked to move bodies. Is he going to clear out run lanes or blast holes through targets? He'll be relying on finding good angles and placing himself correctly rather than overmatching opponents, so he might win most battles at the line of scrimmage off technique more than brute strength. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to free agent guard Parker Collins. Has a lot of upside for sure. Has everything you would want in him. So yeah, definitely someone to keep an eye on. So now moving on to centers. The one and only center we're going to go over in this video, and the final offensive lineman, the final player we're also going to go over in this video. Hailing out of Stanford, standing 6'2", weighing 300 pounds, we got Drew Dalton. So for Drew, he's your prototype intangible center. In terms of strengths, he's a sawed-off center, broad shoulders and hips, and his weight's well distributed in his core and lower half. Helps him in the leverage battle at the point of attack. Combines excellent technique and superior quickness to win more than his share of battles at the line of scrimmage. Consistently pinning bigger, stronger athletes aside, and away from the ball carrier. Has superb snap-to-step quickness, makes difficult down blocks and skips to the second level. Takes efficient angles to linebackers, demonstrates both his football IQ by anticipating where they're heading, as well as his body control and functional power. Throws strikes with his hand placement, pops defenders in the chest plate, latches on securely, pivots with them to maintain his position between them and the ball carrier. Has his balance, lateral agility, and his smarts also show up when he switches off twists and stunts. He made the line calls here and shows the ability to think on his feet, adjust quickly when he's surprised. And he's also the son of former NFL offensive lineman and 49ers offensive lineman Chris Dalton. So he's a second-gen player. Has some NFL bloodlines with him. In terms of his weaknesses, though, has limited size. Won't be a fit for every offensive scheme. He's not the most powerful player in this draft class, but he's stronger than he looks. He was blown up on occasion, knocked backwards, but he attempts to latch on to take defenders with him when he goes down, resulting in some ugly blocks when he's physically overmatched, or on a rare occasion he's caught off balance. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to Joey Hunt of the Indianapolis Colts, so he has a lot of upside for sure, and in football runs through his blood. You know, a couple of things to keep an eye on, especially when he's going to have to learn to hold his ground better and not get overmatched and not make ugly blocks. But still, definitely, this is someone to keep an eye on for sure. But yeah, anyway, that's going to wrap it up here for this Detroit Lions NFL draft preview. So yeah, there are some interesting offensive lineman prospects to look at for sure in rounds 4 through 7 for sure. There are some interesting names for sure. And like I said, you know, I heard about everything about if Penei Sewell falls at 7, the Lions should take him. I don't think Sewell is going to fall past 5 because the Bengals are in more desperate need of an offensive lineman, especially with Joe Burrow's injury, coming off an injury last year. So yeah, as much as I think Sewell would be a good pick at 7, I don't think it's going to happen. I think the lowest Penei Sewell falls is 5. But, you know, there's some interesting offensive lineman prospects for sure. I mean, in terms of the Lions' offensive line, the Lions still got some solid pieces on the line. We're mainly missing just a tackle. And maybe Big Fee finally gets his shit together at guard, maybe. We'll see. Like, you know, we have Taylor Decker. He had a career year last year. You had Jonah Jackson, who had a very solid rookie season. And, of course, Frank Ragnow. He got All-Pro honors, and he was also in the Pro Bowl this year. So, I mean, the Lions have some pieces on the offensive line for sure. Like, offensive line's not the biggest need for the Lions in the world, but, you know, the Lions still got a lot of needs. But, yeah, anyway, that's also going to wrap it up for all the offensive draft previews. And the remaining draft previews we got the rest of the week, they'll all be on defense. Since a lot of the Lions' main needs are still on the defensive side of the ball, since like I mentioned time and time again, the Lions' defense last year was fucking atrocious. But yeah, anyway, that is going to wrap it up here. That's all I got to say. Hail to Outsiders and hail to Great Detroit Master Plan. Peace.